Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily, the first English news program in Poland. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. The Polish president has decided to direct a new law proposal regarding the reform of the Penal Code to the Constitutional Tribunal. The law was proposed by the ruling Conservative Law and Justice Party in order to impose harsher sentences for crimes related to pedophilia.
The president raised suspicion of conflict between the constitution and the act on the amendment of the criminal code proposed by the legislative process. The process of dealing with the legislation raises serious contentions in regards to constitutional standards of the legislative process. Legal security of a citizen, especially in important matters as criminal law, requires that every normative act, in particular a code of law, be adopted in accordance with the procedure provided for in the constitution. MEP Joachim Brudziński brought up the relation between the authority of the president and the legislative process, emphasizing that Poland is a country governed by the rule of law. Poland is a democratic state governed by law which has numerous constitutional guidelines. If the president reserves doubts about the legitimacy of the legislative process, these issues will be resolved by the Constitutional Tribunal. According to Jarosław Kalinowski, the legislative process of changes in the penal code violated fundamental principles of law, which meant that they should be vetoed. This is a violation of the fundamental principles, so it should be vetoed, but also because if we all agree that there should be more penalties for specific crimes, we are now talking about pedophilia and imposing higher penalties. It should have been vetoed, but now, due to the Constitutional Tribunal's involvement in this matter, months will pass. According to Grzegorz Długi, MP of the Kukiz 15 movement, the attempt to politicize the president's actions is unjustified. I think that aversion to legal circles should not be mixed up with the issue of criminal law reform. I do not know if it was a bow to the opposition, then I think Mr. President would have raised some things in his statement more clearly, and he raised them in a very gentle way. I think that attempting to politicize the president's actions, implying that he succumbs to pressure, is simply unjustified. The amendment to the criminal code tightening penalties for, among others, pedophilia was passed on May 16th. The controversy was triggered by the quick procedure used to pass the act in Parliament. The final decision on the future of the new law will be made by the Constitutional Tribunal.
Today, members of the Democratic Left Alliance took part in an inter-party referendum in which they were asked if they would prefer the party to start in the parliamentary elections alone or to form a coalition with other parties. The result is to be announced on Monday, July 1st. Democratic Left Alliance spokesperson Anna Maria Żukowska said in an interview with Polish press agency that if the majority of SLD members speak for the start in alliance with other forces, they will, first of all, engage in talks with partners from the European coalition. According to the most recent poll results, if the elections to the Polish parliament were to take place today, the Law and Justice Party would win decisively with 44% of the votes. The Civic Platform Party would place second with almost half the support at 23.9%. The information was provided by the pollster Social Changes, who made the poll for lwpolityce.pl website.
Apart from the above-mentioned groups, only one more political party would cross the electoral threshold, Robert Biedroń's Spring Party, which would get 7.7% support. That, however, is a loss of over 1 percentage point with regard to previous polls. Following parties would not enter the parliament: Kukiz 15 movement 4.5%, Democratic Left Alliance 4.3%, Polish People's Party 4.2%, and the Freedom Party with 3.1% of the votes.
The French Supreme Court overruled the decision of the Court of Appeal in Paris, which on May 20th ordered the resumption of giving food and water to Vincent Lambert, who has been in a vegetative state for 11 years due to a car accident in 2008. Critics argue that by doing so, the Supreme Court has de facto allowed for a murder of the disabled man. Lambert's parents stated that if the doctors refuse to provide their son with food and water, they will sue them for premeditated murder. Zbigniew Stefanik has more from France.
28 czerwca tego roku zapadł kolejny wyrok w sprawie Vincenta Lamberta.
On June 28th, there was another verdict on the Vincent Lambert's case. This time the Supreme Court overruled the verdict of the Court of Appeal in Paris. According to the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal was not competent enough to take on a case of taking a person in a vegetative state off life support. It seems as if Lambert's parents have no further options to fight for the son's life legally, both abroad and in France. However, they stated that they won't back down. Vincent's mother said she will be soon giving a speech in front of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. The parents also announced they will sue the hospital and the doctors taking care of their son for premeditated murder and not providing medical aid if they cease to feed him. The French government passed a series of bills in 2003 concerning taking people in a vegetative state of life support. Although the bills were passed during a huge political storm, hence there are many legal loopholes and discrepancies in the law. Due to Vincent Lambert's case, we may soon witness legislative changes on the matter in France.
Czyli odłączyć pacjenta od aparatury.
Carola Rackete, the German captain of Sea-Watch 3, an NGO vessel sailing under Dutch flag, which has been ferrying over African migrants picked up off the Libyan coast, has been arrested by the Italian authorities for illegally entering the territorial waters of Italy to disembark more than 40 African migrants. Italian Minister of Interior Matteo Salvini had earlier warned that anyone who breaches his new security decree will be prosecuted. The decree given Italy power to deny access to vessels that it considers a risk to national security.
The captain at some point, given that the ship was not being allowed to dock despite she had declared a state of necessity, assessed that the conditions of the refugees were so serious that she was obliged to dock. She made that choice. Italian Minister of Interior Matteo Salvini sees the issue very differently. These are criminals because a ship of hundreds of tons has rammed and damaged. The investigations are now underway. A fiberglass patrol boat with financed policemen on board. Some were forced to get down, others to escape to save their lives. This is a criminal act, an act of war. Carola Rackete was arrested. Now she's under house arrest in Lampedusa. Now there are 48 hours for Italian justice to decide whether she will remain in prison or not. On June 10th, the ship took aboard migrants in the Libyan rescue zone. Although the Libyan authorities ordered to transport them to Tripoli, the ship sailed in the direction of Lampedusa, where it had been anchored for more than 2 weeks. Italy banned the ship from entering its waters, but took in 11 migrants requiring medical care. The access to the port was blocked by Italian warships.
That's all for today. See you next time on Poland Daily. But stay tuned for the Poland Daily Weather Report, followed by the Poland Daily Business section.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. The temperatures tonight will vary from 9 degrees Celsius in Lublin and Olsztyn and up to 14 degrees in Szczecin and Gdańsk. Tomorrow, during the day, it will be very nice and sunny without any showers. The temperatures will get up to 32 degrees in Zielona Góra. Thank you and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight we will talk about Polish and Australia business exchange. What can we do together, what we are doing, and what are the perspectives. Anthony Weymouth of Embassy of Australia is our guest. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are in charge of business relationships with Central and Eastern Europe. So let us start. What is the current picture? What Australia sells in Poland and what it buys from our region?
Okay, so the relationship, the trade relationship between Australia and Poland is about $1.5 billion per annum, so it's quite small. But the good news for Poland is that it's a trade surplus in Poland's favour. So about 2/3 of that volume or value is on the Polish side. Poland sells a range of advanced manufactured products to Australia, including the Fiat automobiles and a range of other engineered products. On the Australian side, we sell a lot of services to Poland, including education services, for example. On the commodity side, we sell a little bit of coal from Australia to Poland, mainly for steel production.
Okay, so we have a 1.5 billion, and that's looks like there is a room to growth.
I agree, and President Duda opened a trade and investment office for the Polish government in Sydney last year, and I think that's a clear sign that the Polish government is keen to grow the trade relationship between Australia and Poland, and as you say, there is definitely room for growth.
Okay, so as a representative of Australia, in which sectors you would see this growth forthcoming?
Yeah, so the key areas that we're focusing on are resources, and resources includes energy and mining. We're doing a lot of work in the aviation and defence sector. Also in the rail sector. So as you can see by that list, there's not a lot of consumer products that we're focusing on. But the good news for your viewers is that we're also doing a fair bit of work promoting Australian wine in Poland. So there's a lot of wonderful Australian wine available in Poland now as well.
Well, that's true. You can find Australian wine in the shops, and this competition is very tough. Especially we are in Europe. French, Italy, Portugal, Bulgaria, you name it. They also have their wines. Let us stick a little bit to this energy sector and the coal. First of all. Poland is a mining country. Our mines are quite deep.
Yep.
And can Australia be competitive to the Polish coal?
So Australia has been mining for over 200 years. We're very good at the mining activity in terms of getting product out of the ground efficiently, but also in terms of containing the quality of the product that is extracted from the ground. So, and whereas Poland's been mining for hundreds and hundreds of years, and so rather than being competition in the coal space, I don't see it that way. I see it more around a synergy where Australian companies can work with Polish companies. As you say, 1.2 kilometres underground, many of the Polish coal mines. There are some challenges when you go that far deep. Australia does have solutions to help the Polish coal mines address those challenges, and we've been working in that sector for some time now, and very keen to continue to do that.
They were, or they are, Australian companies interested in mining concessions in Poland?
Yeah, there are. There's been 3 or 4 in the last couple of years, but there's also a
How they are doing?
Several are progressing. One of them is in the papers, as you would know. There are some challenges with one of the concessions or with one of the Australian companies, but that's now beyond. I suppose our influence. It's really between the Australian company and the Polish government.
Okay. The perspective of this direct mining in Poland is, do you think, something interesting?
Yeah, to me, as I said before, Australia has been mining for a very long time, like Poland. I think Australian companies have a lot to bring to the table in terms of providing new ways of doing things and also exploring productivity and efficiency dividends to make the Polish industry a little bit more competitive. So I think that's what Australia can bring to the table.
Right, so the basically knowledge and know-how and new technologies. Are there any new technologies in mining?
There are, and it's one of those things, whether it's the autonomous longwall that's underground that enables a higher volume of coal to be extracted from the coalface with less risk to human life. That's an invention or a system that came out of Australia. But having said that, there are still new technologies coming in. If you look at the IT systems that control the mining industry around the world, Australian companies are responsible for about 60 or 70% of those new systems. So we're continuing to innovate to bring new technology to the table to make mining safer and more efficient.
Is this industry pushing the automation of the production, replacing the human miners with robots, remotely controlled machines?
So one example, in Australia, in Western Australia, which is a very big area, there are trains that are over 1 kilometre long with no driver, carrying the ore from the mine to the port with nobody driving the train. They're being controlled remotely by somebody using a joystick in a nice air-conditioned office in the city. And I think where it does make sense to introduce innovation and technology to improve efficiency. The mining industry will continue to do that, and certainly in Australia we're pursuing those goals.
Okay. The separate issue is energy resources, mainly LNG. Poland is very heavily betting on the United States' LNG right now. We are increasing our purchases, but if the things will go well, we will still lack several millions of square meters of the gas. Can Australia help in that?
So Australia will become the largest or the second largest exporter of LNG in the world this year, in 2019, as all of our new projects come on stream. Australian LNG, will become the largest or second largest in the world from an export perspective. A lot of that LNG has been pre-sold into key Asian markets, but I think the industry is changing and there will become more gas available on spot markets, and that gas that becomes available on spot markets could be available to Poland. But to me, what Poland is doing in terms of the diversification of the energy mix, looking more at LNG, it's a great decision by the Polish government. The move to build a new or a third storage tank at the terminal, the Baltic Sea project, where we're bringing a pipeline from the Nordics into Poland to bring gas from the gas fields in the Nordics directly into Poland. I think these are all wonderful projects, and Australian companies are keen to be involved in fact, some of them are.
Okay, thank you very much, and that's very interesting insight. Mr. Anthony Weymouth, Ambassador of Australia, Trade Commissioner, was our guest, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Tomorrow in Poland we will be experiencing high temperatures again, up to 32 degrees Celsius. Luckily, no rain and just a few clouds here and there, so the circumstances will be excellent for outdoor activities. The heat wave will also be seen in Europe. Tomorrow the maximum temperature will be 41 degrees in Madrid, Berlin and Paris will see 34 to 35 degrees Celsius, and the coolest places will be Moscow and Vilnius. Thank you and good night.
Okay then, Łukasz, so where are we now?
This is one of those ancient medieval streets where you could buy stuff. In medieval times, on different streets, you can buy only one kind of goods, and usually streets got the names after what used to be sold there. This one is called Jatka. Jatka would be translated into bloodbath.
Okay.
This is also the very old school way in Polish to say about the butcher shop. And yeah, if you look at it all around, you can imagine meat hanging from the hooks here, blood dripping and flowing everywhere.
Oh, I see.
And it's different now. You can't find here any meat.
So when did the last butchers actually close?
The last butcher shop closed around 1939, just before the start of the war. And the street right now is a street of artists. City decided to give it to people who work in glass and ceramics. If you look closely, most of things inside will be made of those materials. The city is the only one in Poland, one of 3 in Europe with glass and ceramics department at the Fine Art Academy. So yeah, city's proud of it. They want to help them. And yeah, it's also a nice souvenir to bring back home from Wrocław. If you actually walk around the streets of the city, you will notice that there are some sculptures made of glass, which is not very common material used in like a space around the city.
Certainly. Is there some sort of historical significance to the fact that they kind of using glass?
So Wrocław, through its history, was famous for jewelry. Jewelry and pottery is important for the region. There's a famous pottery factory in Bolesławiec, which is like worldwide popular. You can find it in Japan and in the US. Those are basically white ceramics with blue dots. It's all handmade. And yeah, maybe Wrocław a little bit is continuing the traditions right here. The artists are like working here and having their shops. They have also their small commemoration of what used to be here. They want to leave something like reminding them. And yeah, we got the sculptures of the slaughtered animals right here. It's also quite unique thing. It's a little bit like those singers from Bremen. I don't know if you heard the fairy tale. And yeah, it's right here.
So we got a kind of what material is this made from?
This is made from bronze. There's one that's brought back to life. There's a goat, there's a duck, goose, pigs, rabbit, there's a rooster up there. If you look closely, you will find there's a golden egg just behind the goose and a bit of droppings just behind the goat.
Oh yeah,
so
I
everything
see.
here is very shiny. People touching it for luck. I have no idea what luck they're looking for, but always worth trying, right?
Yeah, indeed. Well, I've seen that in sort of many different cultures where you touch
Yes.
the some sort of bronze or golden animal.
And you can
for
see exactly which part is important.
Wrocław has long been the largest and culturally dominant city in Silesia and is today Lower Silesia's capital. The history of Wrocław starts at a crossroad. It was one of the centers of the Duchy and then Kingdom of Poland, and briefly, in the first half of the 13th century, the center of half of the divided Kingdom of Poland. German settlers arrived in increasing numbers after the 1241 Mongol invasion, and Wrocław eventually became part of the Kingdom of Bohemia. After the War of Austrian Succession, the city and region were added to Prussia and later part of the German Empire. After World War II, Wrocław and most of Silesia were transferred to Poland.
Okay then, Łukasz. So, Wrocław University.
Yeah, that's actually the main building of the university. University started its existence in 1702. The Habsburgs, this is the Austrian time of Wrocław. They invited Jesuits, the Catholic order, to open their school here in Wrocław, the college. And Jesuits are famous for education all around the world. Wrocław was a Protestant city, so they had problems in finding a place for their building here in this city. And the only available that was back then in 18th century was after the old city walls. So building is very long, but it's also very narrow. You can walk through it in a few seconds. For them, it was not a problem, but it looks now a little bit strange as it's so long. And the most important part of its history is the beginning of 20th century, when it was a state university. The professors or people connected with Wrocław, they won 10 Nobel Prizes. Some people say 11, but there's a discussion if the guy who was born here in 1945 and then moved out when he was like infant is still treated as the
Does he count?
first. Yeah.
Well, nevertheless, 10's pretty impressive.
That's impressive. People like Alzheimer, the guy who first described the Alzheimer disease.
Oh, right.
He was working here at the hospital. He unfortunately died very young. He was like 51, but he was so like a part of the city. Schrödinger, the guy who made the Schrödinger's cat experiment, which is also a big thing in pop culture. I noticed he also was like giving lectures here. And yeah, nowadays we maybe don't have so many scientific breakthroughs, not so many Nobel Prizes, but we got a lot of students.
Yes.
We
Something
had-
I definitely noticed sort of in and around Wrocław, loads of students.
This is a very young city. Students are about 120 up to 140,000 students in this city.
With a what's the total population?
The total population, the official number of citizens would be 640,000. So that's the almost more than 10%, almost 15% of the whole city population.
Huge amount.
So this is also one of the reasons why Wrocław is developing so well. It's a very young city. It's a city which is inviting a lot of investments. People are willing to invest here because they know that well-educated people will be right away there to
So you think a lot of
work.
the students choose to stay in Wrocław?
Many of them do. I think the better work opportunities in Wrocław would be also only in Warsaw. If you want to make like a big career in maybe in TV or in like I don't know, pop culture. Stuff like this. That would be Warsaw. But the rest, there you go. You got Wrocław. You got everything you need here. It's not too big, not too small. fits most of people's expectations, and culture-wise is also very active. Yeah, when it's young, it's also nicer to build.
The rich history of this place owes much to its geographical location. Located in the borderlands, the gateway from the Carpathian Mountains to the lowland plains, on the navigable Sand River, which of course created great trade opportunities. And that is why this town, Przemyśl, grew up. I'm standing here in the market square in Przemyśl at the beginning of our journey, a journey through history which takes us from the end of the Roman Empire to the end of the Second World War. A rich history of people, of buildings, of institutions. Join me on Poland Daily History as we see Przemyśl above ground and below ground. The First World War ended, and of course, inevitably, the newly emerged Poland, found in this particular region, itself in conflict with the West Ukrainian authorities. The Poles, on the 1st of November, declared a provisional government, and on the 3rd of November 1918, a Ukrainian force tried to occupy Przemyśl. A body of veterans fought them off, and not for the first time, not for the last time in its history, the San River became a border between the Ukrainian forces and the Polish forces. The battle to who could be first to relieve their respective troops was won by the Poles, and an expeditionary force arrived from Krakow on the 10th of November. They gave an ultimatum to the Ukrainians, and on the 11th and 12th of November, they were able, the Poles, to occupy the city finally and remove the Ukrainian forces. And so it remained. Przemyśl, finding itself on the right side, or the left side of the Curzon line, was part of the newly emerged Poland, which after the Soviet War of 1920 was a clear border. And then, of course, we move forward in the interwar years until we come inevitably, in this part of the world, to another war. This time, the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, the Nazi Germans invaded Poland. Carol, that's where we start. This second section, where we look at the effects of the Second World War. Talk us through what happened next.
Druga wojna światowa to są ciężkie działania.
World War II brought heavy military action to the city of Przemyśl and Poland as a whole. Poland was completely unprepared for this attack, despite numerous army, because the Republic of Poland had about 1 million soldiers within its ranks. However, they also had a lot of dated equipment. The general mobilization of the society, which occurred in August 1939, resulted in the fact that we did not have a fighting chance.
Wskórać. Miasto Przemyśl, które praktycznie, czy pobliskie tutaj miejscowości, które się podniosły po oblężeniach związanych właśnie z I wojną światową.
The city of Przemyśl, as well as the surrounding areas, which fortunately got up from their knees after the siege of World War I, were struck once again.
Przemyśl też. Pierwsze takie naloty, działania wojenne w mieście Przemyślu rozpoczynają się z 8 na 9 września.
The first war activities began here between 8th and 9th of September. The railway infrastructure was to be completed completely destroyed in order to cut the city off from the rest of Poland.
Jest to proste. Mimo tak genialnego lotnictwa, jakim było Luftwaffe, pamiętajmy...
Despite Luftwaffe being such an outstanding air force unit, led by the Supreme Commander Hermann Göring, who himself was an aviator master of World War I, they did not manage to hit the railway station. Instead, they hit the Royal Hotel. Bombs are also dropped on today's Sportowa Street, former Targowica, Mickiewicza Street, Primary School No. 5, the Frankel Mill.
Na ulicę Mickiewicza, którą zdjęcie widzimy tutaj wyżej, zdjęć, których nam brakuje, czyli na przykład na szkołę.
However, none of these bombs hit the Przemyśl railway station, which allowed it to survive to this day in the form we can appreciate it. When the Germans entered Przemyśl on the 9th of September, they began their occupation, which did not last for a long time, as it ended just 19 days later, on September 28, 1939. Why was it so short? The signing of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact right before the outbreak of World War II resulted in the fact that the area of Poland was split in two. The difficult placement of Przemyśl on the map of Poland resulted from the border being placed on the San River.
Again, the San River, a border between, in this case, the Soviet forces and the Nazi force on the other side.
Dokładnie tak.
City divided between Germany and the Soviet Union.
Kiedy Niemcy wkraczali do miasta Przemyśla,
When the Germans were entering the city of Przemyśl, the Jewish community was certainly not enthusiastic, as they knew what fate they would meet. The Ukrainian community was much more happy. Meanwhile, when the Soviets entered the city, it was the Ukrainians who feared for their lives a lot more, while the believers of Moses were more enthusiastic. Let's remember that the Jewish population made up around 30% of the entire population of Przemyśl, which translated to about 19,000.
Nie wszyscy tutaj Żydzi. A pamiętajmy, że ludności właśnie żydowskiej było około 30% w mieście, co dawało nam ponad 19 000, więc to był spory odsetek ludności. W mieście Przemyślu funkcjonowały też między innymi mosty. Mostów było
There were a couple of bridges still operating in the city. There were overall 4 of them. However, the bridge we can see in the photographs is the railway bridge, which was in a way a border between the two parts of the city.
Pomiędzy jedną częścią miasta a drugą częścią miasta. Tym mostem się głównie poruszano. Poruszano się również też i mostem drogowym.
It was this bridge that people usually used. Naturally, they used a regular road bridge, however that was relatively dangerous due to the fact that Polish units blew it up when retreating from the German forces. Until 1941, the cooperation between the Soviets and the Third Reich ran very smoothly, which can be seen on these photos. In the area of Zasań, which was occupied by the Germans, crude oil was being excavated.
Czyli na tej części właśnie niemieckiej jest przepompowywana ropa. Ropa, która najprawdopodobniej była wykorzystana m.in. do ataku właśnie na miasto Przemyśl.
This crude oil was then most likely used to attack the city of Przemyśl, as well as for further expansion and attacks, like in the Battle of England and France. This was a very odd time when on June 22nd, 1941, when the Barbarossa Plan, the attack of the Third Reich on the Soviet Union, was initiated. Even before 6 a.m. that day, the oil was still transported from there by the Soviets, which makes the entire situation a historical paradox.
I jeszcze przed 6 rano właśnie ta ropa jest przetransportowana, więc to jest taki trochę paradoks historyczny, ale tak niestety to właśnie wyglądało. Miasto Przemyśl, które znowu przez parę kolejnych dni...
Przemyśl was being bombarded yet again for 6 whole days. This is what it took for Germans to storm the city. We need to remember one thing. Had Hitler not attacked Stalin, Stalin would have done it faster, because of the Molotov Line, which was a system of border fortified regions built by the Soviet Union along its new western borders. This borderline can still be seen to this day, however, it did not amount to much during World War II.
Sowietów.
And so, following the attacks after Barbarossa, Przemyśl was essentially occupied by the Germans until late 1944?
Dokładnie. Dokładnie tak. Do 1944 roku Przemyśl był w rękach niemieckich mniej więcej do około 26-27 lipca tegoż roku, kiedy...
Precisely, yes. Przemyśl remained in German hands until about 26th or 27th of July 1944, when the Soviets liberated these areas. This difficult period of Poland becoming a so-called satellite state began just then, when we came under the jurisdiction of the Soviet Union. Przemyśl, which was demolished in 30 to 40% in terms of the city's infrastructure, only managed to be revived by the 1980s.
I odżywa dopiero w latach 80. XX wieku.
And as we look around, we see these photographs, which are all too typical of cities destroyed during wartime. It doesn't really matter who the attacker is. The destruction and the death for those who are caught up in it is the same throughout the world. And of course, we see these horrific pictures of wanton destruction, so unnecessary, but that, I guess, is what happens during war.
Tak, ale patrząc na te fotografie, przepraszam, poruszamy się na co dzień tymi ulicami, chodzimy, wiemy, gdzie co się mniej więcej znajdowało.
Looking at these photographs, it is so uncanny. We can see all of these streets we are using today. It is so difficult to imagine what would it be like to encounter German or Soviet units shooting up certain buildings here. Nevertheless, the imagination allows us to put it all together. The Przemyśl ghetto is one of the darkest pages in the city's history. The ghetto was operating for over a year and was being eradicated step by step. Jews were being shipped off to death camps, for instance to Bełżec and Auschwitz, but also to the Przemyśl fortress, which was also used as a place of execution for the Jewish population. The so-called Grochów Forest is a place of burial for over 2,000 Jewish people. They were driven to this area in cars, stripped down and murdered. The worst situation happened when children would run away. This always makes your imagination realize what humans are able to do, so we need to talk about such horrifying things too. Almost the entire Jewish population of Przemyśl was exterminated.
To zawsze pobudza tutaj właśnie tą wyobraźnię, do czego ludzie są zdolni. Więc trzeba też o takich i strasznych rzeczach powiedzieć. Praktycznie cała ludność żydowska miasta Przemyśla została eksterminowana.
Very sad this. Almost impossible to believe that you would sort of go around killing, murdering people just because of their religion or their racial grouping. Even when you see these sites, it's still very hard to understand. Anyway, we come eventually, all good things come to an end and all bad things come to an end, and the war ended, and of course in 1945, Poland, slightly different geographical boundaries yet again, but Poland was re-emerged as the Polish People's Republic ultimately, until the changes in 1989, of course. Przemysl found itself, as it always had been, more or less, yet again placed firmly within the borders of Poland. So that's actually quite a happy ending to the story we've seen from the original archaeological start of Przemysl all the way through to the end of the Second World War and to today. So that's actually probably a good note on which to end this tour. So thank you very much, Carolyn. We'll meditate on these scenes and how lucky we are today to be living in a time when we see a Przemysl with its buildings restored and people going about their business, laughing and happy. Thank you.
Dziękuję.
Okay, and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We are in the central courtyard of the town hall, the very, very old town hall here in Torun. What is it, about 700 years old, yeah?
Yeah.
And with Karolina Rucinska, who is going to tell us about the coat of arms and some other things, some of these things that are going on here.
Exactly.
Okay, what about it?
So our coat of arms is actually very strange. It's very unique because it contains an angel which actually any other city in Poland has.
Okay.
But the lower part of the coat of arms presents a part of the city walls with a gate. The gate is half opened for friends, half closed against enemies. 3 towers above that, and everything is held by this angel with the key to all the gates of the city. But this angel is also it's also very strange. It's different from other angels that we know. And I think it's very easy to spot that difference if we know that the Bible says that the angels don't really have gender.
Right.
They're neither female nor male.
Right, like actors.
Maybe.
That's what Orson Welles said about actors. I don't.
Okay, I don't know about actors.
They can play both. You know.
But I know about our angel.
Yeah. Okay.
That she's a.
They don't have sex. I didn't know that. I
But
mean,
ours has.
didn't
Ours
have a,
has. Can you see what?
it
Which
has.
sex does it have?
It looks like a woman to me.
Exactly.
But I always
correct.
think of angels as being women mostly.
According to
But, I mean,
Bible, they
but
don't.
St.
they
Michael was very, you know.
Yeah, some of them have names, but basically
Yeah.
they're like sexual, like they don't have gender. But ours obviously is a woman.
And why? Do you know why?
Maybe
story?
because she protects the city so well, yes. So my theory is that the city is so
She's
well
like
protected
a great
because
mother
it's a
of
woman,
the
yes,
city,
it's
yeah.
a woman, yes.
A woman is the strength.
The strong woman, you know, with the key in her hands, the
Really, yeah.
quite angry look on her
The
face
great
to frighten
women,
off other
weightlifters
enemies.
of the world, and yeah, okay.
One of those tough ladies.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, she looks very attractive. Okay, what's next?
Actually, there is also something that always interests the tourists, which are these figures around here. We have 3 here, 1 there, and there are plenty of them also scattered around the city center.
So these little sculptures, yeah. Let's walk over and have a look. Come on.
Yeah, sure.
What are they all about? This is a woman, right? Yeah.
This is a woman, but here it's not really so much about the gender.
And he looks like a scholar, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay. And what's that about?
these are actually, we have 2 types of those figures in Torun. That's the fact. And these that we have here are the ones that are like just medieval townsmen. And they are inspired by the painting of the Passion of Christ, which is in another church, which is quite far on the other square, in the main square of the new town of Torun. In that painting we have hundreds of medieval people, and the author, the sculptor, nowadays, in modern times, yes, he got inspired by those people in that painting, and he simply made copies of them. So you can find them also in the city center. But as I told you, we have 2 types of those figures. So the second would be the seated women angels.
Okay.
Now,
All right.
I hope you know why,
Yes.
right?
Okay. I get it. Yeah.
That's why another name of Torun is the City of Angels.
The City of Angels. Okay. I didn't know that either. So I'm learning.
So I'm happy about that.
And I hope
I'm glad about it.
So am I. I'm always glad to learn. Okay. Anything else that we should know before we move on?
I also invite everyone to see the interiors of the town hall because it's very special. Yes. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get to the interior a little bit. Okay, stay with us on Poland Daily Travel. That's right, that's the name of the show. What the heck's wrong with me? And I'm here with Karolina Rucinska, our guide through Torun. Stick with us for the next exciting installment.
What can you say about Torun that hasn't been said before? Well, it all depends on how you look at it. At any rate, we're going to give it our best shot to be a little different. Torun is perhaps the prime example of Gothic architecture in the world. Its medieval quality is virtually pristine. And fitting this setting, it's also the birthplace of Nicholas Copernicus, who taught us that the Earth goes around the sun, and not the other way around. I'm not going to say that this is everything you always wanted to know about Torun, but were afraid to ask, but it's close to it. This is certainly a city not to be missed. It's a pleasure to be enjoyed slowly and deliberately. It would take a couple of weeks to see everything in this city and really soak in the atmosphere, and that would still be pushing it. But we are doing our dead level best to show you the greatest hits of Torun. So sit back and enjoy the next few episodes as Torun is unveiled before your eyes. I'm Will, this is Poland Daily Travel, and we love to see you watching. Like us on YouTube, and subscribe if you really, really like us. So join us for Poland Daily Travel Does Torun.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We are here in front of the Copernicus House in Copernicus Street, appropriately enough. I'm with Karolina Rucinska, who is our friend and guide through Torun. And Karolina, he was born in this house, right?
Yes, 1473.
Yeah.
That's precisely when he was born.
1473. And what's special about this house? Because it looks very impressive. It's a beautiful house. His father must have been a very rich man.
Exactly, that's how it was.
Yeah.
And actually this house and a couple of the houses in this street are actually the very best examples of the most typical architecture here in Torun, which is the Gothic architecture. So we can see the most typical characteristics of that style, which are basically four. So the first, the most typical one, is the brick that it's made of. Secondly, the sharp arches above the door, above the windows. The top in the form of the stairs, and those decorations that you can see here, always in three colors here in Torun, black, red, and white. So when you see something like that, you know that this house is at least 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 700 years old, because that's when this dominant time of the Gothic style was taking place. So
of which Torun is one of the prime examples in Europe.
Exactly, one of the best.
In the world,
actually. In the world, yes.
Yeah, it would have to be in the world. If it's in Europe, it would have to be in the world. Because
Exactly.
that's where Gothic style was. Even I know that. Come on, let's go inside. Yeah?
All right.
I think the entrance is here, right? Yeah.
Yes, nowadays, yeah.
Yeah.